One thing I really love about chatting to Luke Leaman is you never ever know what is going to come out of his mouth. Welcome to another episode of the Self-Made Podcast, and as I just said, today I welcome back Luke Leaman. Luke is a generally unique character and a very popular one, still sitting in the top 5 episodes of the Self-Made Podcast history. And today we talk about something a little bit different. But when I get guests on, especially repeat guests, I like to start to learn a little bit about them and build up a bit of a trend or a theme to the episodes that they have. We had Brett on last week and we spoke a little bit ranty and just kind of like put the world to rights. With Luke, there's a little bit of that. But what's interesting about Luke is he always has a fantastic story to tell. And on our last episode, go back and watch it, cheap plug, we start the episode talking about nofap. And on this episode, we talk about never missing a bathroom break and why it's a really important thing. And surprisingly, we both had very different opinions why never ever miss a bathroom break. For him, it was down to stories of taking magic mushrooms, missing the loo, and never ever ever wanting that situation again. For me, it was the time I get work done in silence. This sets the tone for an episode that is full of stories and is incredibly interesting. But the topic of the day is a little bit different from what Luke normally talks about. I remember vividly the first time he came on the show, he was like, I don't want to talk about the stuff I always talk about. I want to talk about something different. And that's when we went into the posture versus performance debate. This time, I went into something that's deeply personal to both him and myself. Recently, I was diagnosed with ADHD, something that really put a lot of answers in my head for some of the ways I've been and some of the things that had happened in my life. And I want to go on a path to learn a little bit more about the condition, how I can master my productivity, what can I do from a medication standpoint. And Luke was the first guy I went to speak to. Having been diagnosed with ADHD as a kid, I probably tried every medication under the books and found many ways from nutrition, performance, training, supplementation and medication, ways of managing his condition and allowing him to be one of the most productive human beings I've ever known. In this episode, we learn about what ADHD is, the struggles that both him and myself have faced over the years, and some of the tips that we have done to sort of work around them, the systems that we have created. But this isn't just for people with ADHD. Productivity and procrastination is something that sort of is prevalent in almost every walk of life and almost every business, every endeavor, every diet. There's always this element. Being productive, managing your time, having systems in place is key to any success that we have in life. And this episode is for you if you feel you want to get more done. So without further ado, because this has been a long intro, I will leave you with myself and Luke Leaman. If you enjoy the show, please share on social media, tagging myself and Luke Leaman. And if you want to support the show, please leave a review on iTunes or Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts from. Or if you really want to support the show and help us give more content back to you, go to the Buy Me a Coffee link at the bottom of the show notes and donate what you can for us to allow us to give you more free content. But as I said, I'll leave you with myself and Luke Leaman. So Luke, it's always good to have you on. I really like about these episodes is that I have absolutely no idea where they're going to go. And I said before coming on air that us starting with sort of nofap last time was a really, really good way to start the show. And I think this has got to be a theme whenever you come on the show. We've got to start with something simple. So I was like, right, I'll go and do some research. I'll find something interesting that has been said by Luke on some bio that he's done somewhere, something that we haven't spoke about. And there was a great one about life lessons on the Muscle Nerds website. So like, never trust a fart, right? Cool. And one of them I thought was really interesting. He says, you never pass up a chance to go to the bathroom. Now, I totally agree with you. I think every guy listening to this will totally agree with you. But why do you think never passing up a chance to go to the bathroom is a solid life lesson?
Yeah, well, and just to give you some background on those life lessons, it's some old guy gave them to me like 20 years ago. I think it was back when I was still selling fitness equipment full time and training part time, and just some old Texan guy bought some equipment from me, and he said, son, I'm gonna give you the best piece of advice you're gonna get as you get older, and never pass up a boner, never trust a fart, never pass up the chance to go to the bathroom. And I went, that's some pretty solid advice. That's pretty fucking solid, right? But look, the bathroom thing too, that it's bitten me in the ass a couple of times, especially when I'm in Europe. You know how it is in London. Like, they're in the fucking bathrooms. Like,
Hmm.
if you're in the middle of a park and you got to pee or poo, you're screwed. Like, and these days, like, most of the places you go in and around London, you have to pay. So if you and who carries coins anymore? So you see a bathroom, you're like, yes. You walk up and you're like, I have no coins. I can't actually get into the fucking bathroom. But yeah, so for me, if I have the urge, even slightly, I'm going to the bathroom, because you never know when you're going to have a issue. Like, maybe you got to get in the car and go somewhere, and then you're going to poop your pants or pee your pants or whatever. So I always highly recommend you just go. You don't hold it in. My wife will hold that shit in until she's busted. So she'll just hold it in and then knock it out. And then she laughs at me because I go to the bathroom so many times a day. But I'd rather take care of it and not have to worry about being in a bad situation. So I got to give you another story. Did I ever tell you the story about when I was in Amsterdam?
No,
And
but this is a great place to have a good story.
this is a good story. So I was in Amsterdam, and one of the reasons why I love to hold our European seminars in Amsterdam is because the obvious thing, you can truffles, right? I can legally go get hallucinogen property containing truffles. I can eat them and I can have a good time.
Mm.
So I had just given a seminar, and so I was totally done. And I went, I'm going to go to the Smart Shop. I'm going to buy box truffles, and I'm going to go see Avengers Endgame when it first came out. And it came out on that Tuesday, and I'm like, I get to see it before any of my friends get to see it, and I get to see it while I'm tripping. This is fantastic. So I go to the theater, and it's a Tuesday afternoon. It's like there's nobody in there. It's like me and a couple of the weirdos. I bought a bottle of wine. You could buy a bottle of wine there. I sat down and ate like half a box of truffles, and completely forgot that I'd taken them. And then when the movie came on, I didn't even catch the first hour and a half because I was too busy going, whoa, because everything looks so cool. And I was like, whoa, why do I feel so weird? And I went, oh yeah, I took shrooms. Holy shit. And I was so surprised, because I'm like, I bought them not having any expectations, because the first time I'd ever done them. And I'm like, surely they're legal here. They're not going to be that. They're not going to be as powerful as shrooms. And I was fucking wrong. Like, I got to one point where I wanted to get some more wine, and my wine bottle was on the floor. And I was like, oh, I don't know if I can even get to it. It's so far away. But that's the first half of the story. So towards the end, you know how long those movies are. We get to a point where I've been holding in this pee. No one told me that those truffles are also a diuretic. No one told me this. So I'm holding this pee, and I'm at the point where I'm like, okay, I'm going to pee my pants. I jumped up, but I was so disoriented. I didn't know where the doorway was to get out of the theater to go find the bathroom. So I went through the first door I could, and I found myself in the stairwell, like behind the screen. And I'm looking around going, okay, this is not how I got in here. So I was like running down the stairs, couldn't find anything. And I busted out of this door into the lobby. And the guy working there looks at me and he's like, what the fuck? And I'm like, bathroom. He's like, fuck, over there. I'm like, cool. I went and took care of that. And still at this time, I still don't realize that it's the truffles making me have to pee so bad. So after the movie, I go to the pub next door. I'm like, all right, I'm going to have a beer. And I'll just eat the rest of these truffles. Fuck it. Because I've got like a 45-minute walk through what's the big park, like Boulder Park, the big park in the middle of Amsterdam. I can this nice walk to my hotel, and it's a really nice sunny day. So I ate them. I'm walking through the park. I get halfway through the park and realize I got to pee again. I'm like, crap. And it's coming on real fast and real strong. And I'm looking around. There's no bathrooms. I'm like, I'm going to pee myself. This is not cool. And because it's a sunny day, everyone's at the park, and all their kids, and everybody's having a good time. And it's like, okay, I've got to do something about this. So I see this kind of grove of trees where it's like you can't really see into them. I'm like, okay, I'll go and I'll put my backpack down, and I'll squat down, and I'll pretend like I'm going through my backpack, but I'll pull my wiener at the side of my shorts, and I'll just have a quick pee. So I'm in the middle of this. I don't realize that I'm kind of on an incline. So the pee starts coming back towards my feet, and I've got flip-flops on. And then I hear the lady and her kids behind me, and I freak out. I'm like, I'm going to be that guy, the American guy that ends up in the jail for indecent exposure. So I ended up falling, and I just pissed all over myself. So I might as well have just peed my pants anyways, because it just ended up all over me anyways. And then, then I got up and kind of shook myself off and went back to my hotel room. So yeah, highly recommend always knowing where a bathroom is. And
such a long-winded way to come back to that. I love it.
Yeah, especially if you're taking things that act as a diuretic. And I actually had an app on my phone at one point. It was called something like "Where's the bathrooms?" So you could open the app and it would tell you where the bathrooms are, if they were free, if you had to pay for them. So that's been quite handy when I'm traveling. Yeah,
no, I tell you what, I don't have a story in those sort of substances that is anywhere near as entertaining as that. I always remember, and there's Ocean Park here in Hong Kong, which is this sort of like theme park, and it was a little bit away from where we were, and I was sitting going, wow, I didn't realize it was that close. And we were just sitting there, looking at clouds and all these kind of things. And then, 5-6 hours later, come back and go, why is it so far away now? Like this whole island had moved like so much closer to me. Like I almost felt like it was like, could I swim it? If I give it a go, could I swim it? And then the moment I decided not to swim it was that moment where I think I spoke to you about this on the last show when we were talking about posture and performance. And we're talking about stress and how stress affects, how hypertonic a muscle is. And I just did this. And all of a sudden I was like, there's a hole in my side. There's a hole in the side of me. And I just realized for the first time, I hadn't got hypertonic pecs. And for the first time, my pec moved as it should. And I can actually feel like my armpit rather than just being like locked in all the time. I was like, yeah, maybe I shouldn't swim it. But going back to the bathroom thing though, I generally think that there's no place more peaceful. People talk about happy places. They talk about beach in Bali. And I'm like, when I'm stressed, when I'm back to back with like loads of clients, loads of work, there's nothing better than that 5 to 10 minutes where I can just sit and then no one's around, no one can disturb you. And there was a reason why I'm on like level 3,500 on Candy Crush, because there's no Wi-Fi in the bathroom at work, but I need to do something just to shut my brain off. And it's definitely, that's why I think life advice is good. If you want creativity, if you want inspiration, I get it more in a bathroom than any other place on the planet.
I'm just surprised 5 to 10 minutes, man. I'll be in there easy 15 to 30 minutes. I'll sit down, I'll pull up my squatty potty and I'll just chill. And that's when I start posting the memes. Me. Everyone that follows you on social media now is just going to think about that anytime they see your memes now. Yeah. And I'm quite vocal about that. If you see like 5 or 6 memes in a row, I'm taking a shit. That's what's happening.
It's probably exactly the same for me. Like literally client touch points. Any client listening to this know when I send you a WhatsApp message, like, how's your diet going today? You know what's happening.
That's an easy time to get check-ins done.
Absolutely. Yeah. Maybe not be a Loom videos though. That would be a very different client experience. It's good acoustics. What can I say?
Why is it echoing? Where are you? Don't worry about it. Yeah. Oh, what was that? Nothing.
So moving on. Go on.
Quickly. That's the second reason why I say never pass that chance up. It also goes back to that never trust a fart thing, because, and you'll realize this the older you get. Like, I would say probably 1 out of 20 farts ends up being the wrong one to trust, and that happens to me at least once a month. And it's never bad. It's never like, oh God, it's kind of like, okay, I got to go wipe that out. So, and that'll happen. The hole gets loose as you age, I guess.
Yeah. And nothing ruins the moment. Even if it's not that bad, if there's a moment where you're going to need confidence, that's where it's going to happen. It's going to happen when you do your first seminar after COVID in 2 years. I bet that happened on your first one. You get up there, you're ready to go, I'm ready to rock, boom. Like, oh, crap. Literally.
So the worst is when nothing actually happens, it's just kind of wet. And then you're standing there, you're like, and you just feel it, and your cheeks are sliding around, and there's no real solid anything, but it's wet. You're like, I hope that's not made a wet spot on the back of my pants. Christ.
I hope today's not the day where I go through incline hypers with the guys.
Yeah. And it's not like you can reach back there to feel if it's wet, because if you do, you're going to accidentally push it into the wetness. So you just got to trust that it's not there and try to make your way to the bathroom and take care of it.
I tell you what, I remember vividly before the first time you came on the show, and you went, I just don't want to talk about least mode. I've done it 1,000 times. And I was like, I said, right, I'm going to make my mission. Anytime I have Luke on this show, I'm going to think of topics outside the box. And initially that was like, okay, let's talk posture. Let's talk brain stuff. Let's talk what we talked about today. But it's now just transformed into something completely different in its entirety, right? I think your show with Nick Daniel with the crazy dumb shit was pretty close for this. But like, we've had no fap, we've had wet farts, and we've had the beauties of toilets and magic mushrooms within the first 10 minutes of both of our shows, which is priceless. Either people are going to be raving fans of us for life, or they've turned this off right now.
You never know what's going to come out of my mouth, so you might as well stick around.
And the beauty of this as well, I know with the people that follow me, and from how well our last episode is, I still think you're number 3 of all time, that a lot of people are going to listen to this one. And this is brilliant when they start with this topic. But moving on to sort of like the topic we had, going off on something that's a little bit different from what we talked about. So I thought it'd be good to have something that's we'll have a story or two that's a little bit personal to both of us and relevant to me right now. And I think has a carryover relevant with other people that don't have this issue. And let's talk a little bit about ADHD. This is something that I was, very recently diagnosed with. In typical ADHD fashion, I never booked the appointment to go and check. So I suspected it for years and years and years on end after losing 3 leather jackets and multiple pairs of rugby boots and never been able to do anything other than right at the last minute. Like my online check-ins on a Monday still finish at 1, 2 a.m. because I always leave until that last point. So like with yourself, I mean, you've done a fair amount in your career, running Polican Group to running Muscle Nose, online programs, in-person events, having a gym. There's a lot of stuff that you managed to do despite being very open about having ADHD. What is it that you think allows you to get so much done before we talk about what actually ADHD is?
I think part of it is there are some benefits to having it. Part of that is, at least for me, memory. You have a tendency to have this crazy ability to remember things, actively recall things, and learn things very quickly. And my wife, she said it before, like, I'll open up a textbook, read one or two lines, and immediately start using it on stuff. And she's like, "How do you do that? How do you grab a concept so quickly?" And so, well, part of it's probably the ADD. The second is ADD allows you to be really obsessive about very specific, narrow topics. So my career just happens to be the one that I fell into. And so you end up with such a wide base of knowledge that it's easy to lay other concepts on top of that repeatedly. I think that's probably part of it because I'm the same thing, man. With mine is so severe that it's like out of sight, out of mind. So it can be really detrimental on personal relationships because I can just completely forget that I'm friends with people. Like I don't call people, I don't call my mom, I don't talk to my mom hardly ever. Like if you're not right here, right now, I don't even think about it. Like, because you get so narrow minded and so like your vision becomes so like looking through a straw type stuff. So if it's here and now, I can take care of it. If I don't take care of it now, I'll probably forget. So you have to come up with strategies and work strategies too. Like for me, I have to have some type of chaos going on. So I have to, when I do work, I have to have like really repetitive electronic music going, which I don't even like that much anymore. It's shit I liked in my 20s, but now I don't really like it. But if I can hear the it keeps me like in a steady rhythm. But if I get that rhythm broken, it takes an hour, 2 hours for me to get back on track. So there's inherent pros to it. But there are a lot of cons. Like you tend to have bad addictions, like being a workaholic, working way too much. You get a lot of things sound like a good idea and you get really hyped up about something and you never finish a project. So I've got like all these projects in my garage that I haven't finished yet because I started woodworking stuff and I'm like, I'll get to it later because it's in the garage. I don't see it. It's not in front of me. It can be quite chaotic. Like this is about the time where my medication starts wearing off. So I get fairly well manic in the evening. So I wake up super manic and just a bit weird. And then Zoe will be like, "Did you take your medicine yet?" I'm like, "I'm going to take it in a minute." And she's like, "Please go take your medicine. You fucking drive me nuts." And then you're pretty good for about 10, 12 hours. And then it runs out. And at night, you're just like, you're crazy again.
It's interesting. There's so much to unpack in that, and I think this is going to be a really interesting episode personally for me because there's going to be all these light bulb moments as I'm, still learning. Even though I've suspected for a while and done my research, but I'm still learning about it in so many ways. And interesting, you bring up the personal relationships in terms of remembering to be friends with people. It's I see this all the time. Like Ellie will call her parents 3-4 times a week. She'll have regular contact with her friends, and I'm sitting there going, "Man, I haven't spoke to my best mate in six months." And I'm sitting there in that weird moment now, planning a wedding, and I had to call my best mates, and I had that moment going, do they still even consider me a good mate? I don't speak to them. I still do. But you don't. And I find this, how do you find this with client work? Because I often find with touch points, particularly with touch points with clients, check-ins, they're in the diary, they're regimented, they're good. I get that. Programming, all that, all the actual stuff, main stuff is fine. But those little things through the week, I could quite easily, it's not because I don't care, but it's just I can quite easily go, well, you haven't messaged me, so Monday, check-in day, I'll message Steve.
Yeah, my big one is I don't do weekly check-ins anymore. I found they just don't work with what I do. I would rather talk to clients every day. So that's what I like about the systems we use, because when they finish a workout, I get pinged. I can open up the workout. I can watch the videos. I can take screenshots and show them where they're out of position, what I need them to change. So I try to touch base with them often, multiple times a week, if not every day. Now, the only problem is if you have I've had clients that don't log in any workouts, and you'll see, I'll forget that I even train you because I don't think you're doing your workout, so I'm not going to waste my time. And then all of a sudden, 3 weeks later, you'll see all of their workouts get uploaded. It's bro, you can't do that. I need you. How hard is it for you to do a set? You got 2 minutes of rest. How hard is it for you to go in there and go, I did 100 kilos by 12? So I can only work with people who will put their data in when their workouts. I'll work with other people, but I don't want them to get angry if they think, oh, you forgot about me, or you're not fucking contacting me. Look, bro, you got to contact me. We've talked about this. I was really clear when we first started. Yeah. You need to put your videos in. I need something to look at so I can actually coach you. I need you to put your pictures in, fill out your chronometer. I need you to fill out your data, and I won't forget about you. As long as you put your data in there, I will always take care of you. The minute you start fucking around on that, number one, I forget I'm even training you. Number two, I get bored. It's not fun for me to train you anymore because I'm not actually training you. I don't just give people programs. If I did that, I would just go on our website and I would just load shit tons of programs. You just buy one-offs. I don't do that because that's not what I do. Even I am considering doing it for people who don't want coaching and just want to do programs. But if you're going to train one-on-one with me, I need people to actually be interactive and answer back when I ask you a question and write your information in the workouts, because what's the fucking point? What's the point of paying the money if you're not actually going to do the thing? And I don't care if you're fucking up with your diet, fucking up everywhere else. What I do care about is you're not communicating with me, because then I can't help you and I'll forget about you.
Yeah, 100%. And one of the things that I've made big changes in terms of how I onboard people is I'm very, very OTT in a way about okay, this is how the onboarding process works. We're going to get on a call and we're going to go through all this. And one of the expectations I always have is you have to communicate with me.
Yeah.
If I don't want you to hide from your diet. If you're struggling, tell me, because I'd rather sort this now than I had a client once that was he was not losing any weight, Well, haven't got any data to work from. So could you give me something? No, because then he eventually gets food diaries. I'm okay, cool, but this doesn't add up, right? You were a 130 kilo man. You're saying you're eating 1,400 calories, which is 1,000 calories in what I've given you, and you're not losing weight. Okay, just I call bullshit. And then over time, I was can you send some food pictures? Can you send the food pictures? Nothing. 8 weeks down the line, he has 1,000 calories worth of sauce.
Holy shit.
Yeah. Right. And immediately that I could have solved that 6 weeks ago.
Yeah.
And those little things, I would much rather, plug for your nutrition course when that video of me with that big fluffy beard opens the course. I would rather someone say, I had 800 grams of protein, like that guy did. And in this case, for people who haven't watched the video, if not, go and follow Muscle Nerds. You'll see it eventually. They'll be like, he weighed the plate with the chicken on it and went, that was 800 grams. That must mean 800 grams of protein. And, I didn't see him polishing off china, picking out his tooth. But, I would rather you admit those mistakes to me than you just keep quiet. And then, as I said, I will quite easily forget if you don't work with me.
Yeah, 100%, especially for me, especially with the training, because that's where I actually have the contact. Because so every morning I have to get up, I do my coffee, I take my Vyvanse, and then I immediately get on the computer and I'll sit there for like fucking 8 hours, because I'll get in this workflow while my medication's working. And then I might get up and I might do my workout. And then I get back on the computer for another 3 or 4 hours. Right. But the first thing I do is go in and see who's done the workout. So I'll go in and I'll start going down the list, coaching, saying good job or bad job or whatever. And then I'll immediately go into their chronometer and I'll look at what they're doing in their diet. And if I have anything that I need to address with them, I'll address it then. So it's a pretty good procedure of open client, look at the program, look at chronometer, where's their weight going? What are they logged? Are they hitting their macros? Are they hitting their calories? What types of foods are they eating? What do I need to address this or not? And that's basically like the first 4 hours of my day is just getting that done. And then the next 4 or 5 hours is programming and then planning for their future phases and all that. And then, the workout, and then I come back and I've got people all over the world. So it's like I get everybody when I was asleep, I'll knock them out in the morning. So everyone it's usually everybody in America. And then later on in the day, now I can get all the Australians and I can get the people at the end of the day. It's all the people from England and in Europe and all that. And so it's this kind of constant revolving cycle of hitting people in every different time zone. But yeah, if they don't put the information in, it's not going to ping me. I'm going to have no idea. So I've got that strategy. And also with the software we use, it'll alert me when they're 7 days out from needing a new program. So I can stack them up and I'll start working time zone to time zone, like who's first, who's going to wake up first, get all their shit in, move to the next time zone. That's what I do if I'm behind, which I've been chasing my tail for the last few months because we had 2 coaches resign. So I absorbed 40 new clients when I was only really working 5 or 6 at the time. So I've had to redo my strategies in order to get everybody where they need to be. Now, the next strategy, and I find this works really well for ADD, is you just got to plan ahead. The more stuff you can plan ahead for, then as you're coaching, you don't have to freak out when you need to write a new program. So very difficult if you have, employees that quit and you take their coaches or their clients, because you know what's going on with everybody, but you don't know to the level that you need to train them. And I wasn't left with any notes. So I had to go back. Some of these clients, 2 or 3, 4-year clients. So I had to go back and handwrite every single phase they've done and then try to figure out what the plan was and what the periodization model was and where they're going. And then, so it's taken 3 months to get where I'm pretty well caught up and even. So now the next step is to start planning out the next 12 months. That way I've got a skeleton of where they're going. And then I can just go ahead and start creating all the templates and creating all the modifications I want. And that way you're always, 3, 4, 5, 6 months ahead. That's when everything gets really smooth. But if the people with ADD don't have great organizational skills. So you have to use technology to do that. You have to. So because if you don't, what ends up happening is if you don't stay on top of it, we tend to fall prey to analysis paralysis worse than other people. So the minute you start dropping balls, you just freeze. So it's kind of like you look at that stress response of fight, flight, freeze, or facade. You end up freezing, and then you're like, you don't know what the fuck to do because you can't figure out what's the most important thing to knock out first. So then you just start trying to knock out the easiest stuff really fast so you can get 10 or 12 things done really quick. And then you start trying to eat away at the big stuff. So all planning is so important. Organization is so important, but it's also so difficult for people with ADD because they don't have that organizational capacity to do it. it's one reason why I think, like Zoe, my wife, is really good at organization. So if I ever get to the point where I'm freaking out, she's really good at saying, okay, what do we need to take care of first, and kind of laying that out for me. So it's always good to have someone who can help you strategize when the shit hits the fan.
Yeah, I mean that is very, very much the story of my life. Like as
Yeah.
soon as I feel a little bit behind and stuff, I find it so hard to get back engaged. That before we sort of go into some of the strategies you use to stay productive, because one thing I noticed about your routine there is it seems so deep focused. And now I appreciate that people with ADHD can go into these moments of hyper focus and then they necessarily goes point, but they can't focus at all. This seems very routine, very regimented, which is almost like you're in a little bit of control of it. But before we go into that, I want to double back a little bit for people that don't know a little bit about ADHD and the mechanisms behind it. Like go as deep or as surface layer as you want, because I know you can go both. What is the definition of ADD, ADHD? Is there a difference? What struggles do you have? Because I think it's something that is very misunderstood, and people just think it is laziness or procrastination or unmotivated, and it's not.
Well, the thing is too, it's the terminology and the classification have changed over the years. There's now, I believe, 8 different types of ADD and ADHD, and depending on what your symptoms are, they'll classify you in one of these, and it goes kind of from a level of low to like really like severe, which mine is at the more severe range. And it can go from just, a lot of people will say, well, I'm not organized, I'm forgetful and blah, blah, blah. It's, if you take that stuff, like most people that are like, I can't pay attention, I'd rather get on social media. Now take that times a million, and that's what you got. So it's not as simple as just saying, well, I'm dropped the ball here, or I can't get organized. Can be very crippling. And it can lead to a lot of depression type qualities and that type of thing, feelings of failure and stuff like that. Now with the type that I have, it's kind of a ADD. So you've got the attention deficit disorder, but I also have a hyperactivity thing. So I can swing massively from, being almost, I don't want to say it's kind of like almost like bipolar, but it's not classified as bipolar. You just go through these really low lows and really high highs, except that I'm more on the manic side than anything. So if I haven't taken my Vyvanse, I'm pretty scatterbrained and crazy. And I don't think before shit falls out of my mouth. So people always hear me on podcasts and they're like, oh shit, he says some crazy shit. If I wasn't on my medication, you should see what I say at that point. Because I say some, you just don't think that.
We've had plenty of conversations off air about the trouble I've got myself into over the last few years, but this exact sort of stuff, right? And so I can totally empathize with that sort of like impulse control, maybe not to the same degree, but I get that ability control. Of I need to say this. If I don't say it to you, I'm going to say it to someone. And that's a really difficult motion, because you're going to crack eventually.
Yeah. And the impulse control is really hard. That's the hard one. And that's why a lot of the medications smooth that out. And if you do genetic tests, I've done genetic testing for everything. So I've got this issue where I don't make dopamine like normal people. I don't transport it like normal people, and my receptors don't work. So one of the problems of that is it makes you crazy prone for addictive stuff, like exercise, food, drugs, work, whatever. So it's like you're always kind of chasing a dopamine high because you don't actually produce it correctly. So that's why, even the level of Vyvanse, I'm on the highest level you can take, at least in Australia. They won't let you have more than that. Now there are some people in America that are being more progressive and trying out much higher levels. There's no way they would ever do that here. Not for at least the next 20 years. So I supplement with, I got to take shit tons of caffeine. I do the nicotine mini lozenges. So I have to actually overstimulate myself to calm myself down. So and that's kind of the thing, that most of the drugs that you'll see, most of them are amphetamine based. So they're amphetamine based because they smooth you out with the dopamine. So for me, if you don't have ADD and you took my medication, you'd feel like you were on speed. When I take it, it actually calms me down like I've taken a Valium. Which is a really weird thing to think about, but that's what it does. Even in my party days, when we would do, we cocaine, we'd sniff a little cocaine or maybe do a line of meth, I would always be calm. And I didn't know why everybody was so hyped up. I'm like, why is it? This is cool. I actually feel normal. What's going on? And I never understood that. But that was before I started getting into like looking at pharmacokinetics and looking at all that. And I didn't realize that that's what the Ritalin was doing for me. And that was what the Adderall and that's what the Concerta was doing. And I could not ever stand those drugs. I took them as necessity to get through school and all that. But I think that those drugs, most of them they're dirty to me. They're too potent. They're too fast. So especially like Ritalin and Adderall, when I would take
just for context here, I'm on a long-acting Ritalin. I've got a short-acting, which was given to me for the days where you working really hard into night to keep you going.
Yeah,
I've never taken it. I've tried not to. But yeah, so just for context, as you're saying.
Yeah, and say looking at like Ritalin and Adderall, when I first got on, they didn't have long acting. Most of them were just very short acting, like 3, 4, 5 hours. The only thing I didn't like too is it fucked my sleep up and it fucked up my appetite. Like I couldn't eat. Then they brought out Concerta, which is like a time released Ritalin. It's like in a little plastic capsule looking thing with a hole on it, so that it's kind of just leaches out of the capsule over time. And that was okay. But it always gave me this weird, dirty, acidic-y feeling. And when I got on Vyvanse, that was a moneymaker. I could take Vyvanse and be totally normal. The Ritalin and the Concerta and the Adderall always made me a zombie. So when I would take it, I would have no personality. I would just sit there and just like, I wouldn't talk. I didn't like the way it made me feel. The Vyvanse never had any of those problems. So yeah, so you can take one of those. I'll take one at like 6, 7 in the morning, and I'm pretty good until 5 or 6 at night. So that's always been the one for me.
It's interesting you mentioned about like taking like stimulants, whether that's medications or recreational stuff, and feeling calm. Like I remember the first day that I took Ritalin, and it was a weird thing because I was waiting for myself to be really amped up and hyper. I was ready to be really over the top, and I felt more present. It was weird. Like I was doing my sessions and I was like there in the room with my client. I was getting more at the session. I was enjoying my work more because I wasn't thinking about all the things I still need to do. With that feeling of being behind and that feeling like, oh, what do I have to do first? I can't be present on what I'm doing because I'm thinking about all those other things all of the time. And I remember coming home and listening to a podcast. It was, of all people, it was Diary CEO with Piers Morgan. Right. So I've never had so much focused listening to Piers Morgan in my whole entire life. But I was just so present in it. And I was like, is this what it should be like all the time?
Yeah.
I wasn't even aware of that.
I think that the way I try to explain it to people is that, when you're not on the medication, there's a lot of noise. And when you take it, it cuts all the noise down. Like this crazy amount of background noise. And a lot of times it's like somebody's changing the channel on a TV and they won't stop changing it. And it's like, just put it on one channel, but it just keeps changing and changing and changing and changing. And then when you take your medication, it's like the TV stops on the greatest movie you've ever seen and you can concentrate on it.
That's a brilliant analogy. Because I say like, I always remember the times like, I sit there and I was writing a beginner 12-week GBC program. And, from where I used to work, how good I must be at writing 12-week GBC programs because that's all you ever write. And so I sit there.
It is a good method, though. It is a good method.
And I still use it very regularly to this day. But I'm sitting there with this program. I've written a million of these. I know exactly what I'm doing. If you sat there and tapped me on the shoulder and asked me, what are you going to write for this client? I go, yeah, I'll do this, 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 and this. And I sat there and I go, one of the best analogies is from a YouTube channel called How to ADHD. And it's like, you've got a bridge, like an Indiana Jones Temple of Doom style rickety wooden bridge. And you know the destination, you know how to get there. And you take the slats out. So you've just got these gaps. And I'm sitting there with this program, I know how to write, but I can't do it. I'm just stuck. And I was like, why? This is the moment where I start thinking there's more to this, that I'm not just lazy or bored. So I was like, I know how to do this. Why am I so stuck?
Yeah.
And that was the bit where my brain was like, okay, I need to look into this more.
Yeah, 100%. I'll tell you what happened. I was off of it for a long time and I was just struggling. I didn't realize why. I just I thought I had everything under control and I didn't. And then when I was right when COVID hit, I was in Texas giving a 5-day seminar. And Zoe called me. She goes, "Look, I've got to change your flights. You got to come home because they're going to shut the borders down and you're going to get stuck in Texas." All right, okay. Which that caused me just an enormous amount of grief because I've never, ever canceled a seminar, especially right in the middle of it. Never canceled one. Oh, and I would be, dying of colon cancer. I'd still give the seminar. I wouldn't give a shit. I ended up going to the emergency room either that day or the next day because I had a panic attack and I was like freaking out. My heart rate was like 180 beats per minute. And I was like, oh God, is this a heart attack or panic attack? And I knew what it was because I've had them before, but it's been a very long time. Go to the emergency room. They gave me a benzo. I calmed down. I'm like, okay, fly back to Australia. I get here, COVID's going down. Shit, everything's shit in the bed. And we had bought our gym 5 days before we started doing lockdown. So we're in lockdown and I didn't sleep. I was so anxious and so stressed out about it and I started having a panic attack, but it was one of these really mild ones that you don't feel panicky. You just feel despair and you don't know why. And then I didn't sleep for like 4 days and I started hallucinating. I started getting like visual hallucinations, olfactory hallucinations, started hearing things. And I was like, well, that's not good. But I was like, I'll probably need to go to the doctor now, but that's typically what happens when you don't sleep for like 4 days. And, I was actually getting quite scared, but I didn't want to call like a hospital or call anybody because I didn't want them to end up saying, well, now we're going to put you for 3 days. We're going to stick in this room and observe you. I didn't want to, freak anybody out. So, I finally got to sleep. And then the next day I went to the doctor and I said, look, this is what's happening. I have panic attacks, blah, blah. So she prescribed me some diazepam to use, if I needed it. And she tried to put me on an antidepressant. And I go, look, I'm not depressed. I'm not at all depressed. I'm like, there's something else wrong. Like she tried to put me on Lexapro and she went like straight to the highest dosage. And I went, I'm not taking that. Like, I'll just take the diazepam. And then I started thinking about it. I go, you know what, listen, I'm supposed to be on ADD medication. I haven't taken it for a while because I just felt like I had it under control. I think if I just get back on my ADD medication, this will go away. And so she was like, well, I'm not really supposed to. I said, look, I can tell you the dosage I used to be on. I can tell you every drug I've been on, the dosages, how long I took it, at what age I took it. I don't want to have to get referred to a psychiatrist to get, so she says, you know what, fuck it. If you already know, we'll just start you out on a half dose. And I'm like, cool. Start taking it. Everything went away. Like complete, no more panic attacks. I was getting arrhythmias and shit. And I was, all that went away. The minute I got on my Vyvanse, my heart, I stopped skipping beats. I stopped feeling my heart popping because I would every like fourth beat I would hit a thump, and so I had to go get like an echo. I went and got an ECG, EKG. Had to go to the cardiologist a couple of times. Cardiologist goes, I don't know why your doctor even sent you here. You're perfectly fine. He goes, everything's great. He goes, you're an athlete. You got an athlete type heart, so it's gonna sound a little different than normal people. And I went, all right, cool. So I'm good. He's like, I'm good. I took my Vyvanse. Nope. I haven't had a single problem in the last few years since I've been on the Vyvanse, last 2 years.
Wow. Like, when was it you were diagnosed? Were you diagnosed as an adult or as a child?
Nah, as a kid.
Yeah. So like, is this something that your parents suspected, or was this something, do you actually remember getting diagnosed?
I can't remember what age it was, but it was, just a lot of like disruptive behavior, inability to concentrate. And I just kind of cruised through school, just being smart, just being smart, not having to do, what school wasn't that hard. And I guess that was part of the ADD too, but I was constantly getting in trouble. I think when I was in high school, we did, so we still got spankings in high school when I was there. Like we were the last class to get paddled. And I think I got paddled like 200 and something paddlings in 1 year, which, if you got paddled a certain number of times, you got to sign the paddle. So I had like a couple of signatures on the paddle.
Did anyone try and get paddled more for that reason? Just as like, I want to be able to sign it?
I don't think so. I certainly didn't. Because it was not fun. Because we had a pretty big principal at our school, and he could swing that thing. And there were actually 3 different paddles. She had the guy's paddle, the girl's paddle, which was like plywood it was nothing. And then he had the bad kids paddle, which is like hitting somebody with a goddamn oak tree. Yeah, so I never got hit with a bad paddle. I just got hit with a normal paddle. But yeah, so then I think, because I was kind of on and off when I was a kid. I didn't like the way Ritalin made me feel, so I wouldn't take it. So I just stopped. And then I got into college and back on it like in my early 20s. And then, here's the thing, like you said, you told me earlier, like, I forgot to find out what the results were when I went and took testing and all that. That's the same thing. I ran out of medication, forgot to refill it, and then just went back on this ADD path of just driving off the road into the fucking bush, and never got back on it.
Like I remember vividly, like I actually went to the doctor for something else. Like I was like, well, I went in and I was nervous about something. I was like, so I was, I had last minute appointment to go to the doctor. I was worried about something else. I'd had about 4 or 5 coffees by that point in the day, just like stimulating myself. I was like, I still do to a degree, but certainly more on the stages to keep me focused in that stage. And I go in and I sit down to the doctors, and my blood pressure was through the roof, probably because of nerves, white coat syndrome, caffeinated, right? And I've done enough of your course to check my blood pressure fairly regularly to know that I'm not about to have a heart attack and keel over. So I'm getting in. They've got 5 or 6 nurses around me testing my blood pressure. Going, God, he's really through the roof. Like, no, I've tested. Like here's the last 3-4 mornings of readings. I'm all right. Like, going in, went in, immediately found out what I was worrying about was fine. I was like, well, while I'm here, like, can I ask about this? Because I've been worrying about this for a while. Started going through the little questionnaire, and then got to the end. I was like, yeah, you're off the charts. I'm going to prescribe you this, and like, boom, off it goes. And then I go away, and within one day, I'm just like, oh, okay, it was such an incredible feeling, because it was like getting diagnosed as an adult. It's like this weight off your mind. All the times where you felt like, why did I say that? Or why am I so incapable of doing that? Or feel like I'm lazy, or feeling like I'm a failure. And I sat there, I felt like I'm a relatively smart kid. I've done all right for myself. I was like, why can't I live anywhere near my potential? And it's just like, I have an answer, which is such a lovely feeling, because it was just like, I'm not dumb. I'm not lazy. I'm not, I don't lack willpower, or motivation, or whatever buzzwords you want to put with it. And it was such a weight off my shoulders.
Yeah, it's free. It's a feeling of freedom. It's like, finally now I understand, why I've had all these issues. Right. So, it can be a really freeing experience. And for me, like, I've never had to worry too much about it, because I got diagnosed early, and I know I've always had it. But getting back on it. What was it? February 2020. That's shown me, like, it's been like, okay, this is why, the last like 10 years have been kind of chaotic, up and down, and this and that. I probably should never have gotten off my meds.
So like, one of the things you mentioned at the start of this, like doubling back, was that like there's many benefits, I think, for ADHD.
Mushrooms.
Well, we can double back to that whenever you want. But one of the things you said, there's many benefits of having ADD, ADHD. And I totally agree with you. I think one of them is creativity. Like, you have to find solutions outside the box of stuff, because stuff don't work. I've tried every to-do list, every system, everything to make my life easier in the book. We have probably tried more productivity hacks than anyone else on the planet. So there is going to be people listening to this that some may be able to relate with our stories. Some may just procrastinate at times and be a little bit bored. First off, like, why, in a broader spectrum, do you think people generally procrastinate? And from all the stuff that you've tried through all your years, what are the best productivity lessons you have personally learned?
So, like, why do people procrastinate in general? I think it's just because they're doing things they just don't want to do, right? That's usually, like, imagine, I've been in this situation before where you're in a job you just absolutely hate. So you just find shit to do because you're just not having much fun with the things you're doing for work. Now, for us being ADD, that's ridiculous, because I fucking love the work. I love to program. I love to get online. I love to talk to my clients. So if I don't do that, it's not because I don't want to do it. It's because I'm having an episode or whatever, or I'm stressed out and it's making my symptoms a lot worse. Because I actually I can't think of anything more awesome than sitting here and running cool ass training programs and see my clients put on like 50 kilos in a back squat in a couple of months. I can't think of anything more fucking cool than that. And that creativity is a big one too, because I think that's one of the benefits as well, is that you can see these abstract things that most people wouldn't put the two and two together, right? Like if you think, one of the things that you learned in program design is the backloaded structural balance. And you look at that and it's like, it defies everything we're told not to do in a workout. But when you put it together, it fucking works like a fucking champion. But no, only somebody that had that ability to be creative and think outside the box, only someone like that would be able to put that together, because someone that couldn't think like that would never say, well, let's put this with this. That's a good idea. They'd go, no, this and this does not go together. And then we would be like, well, why not? Let's try it and see what happens. But, so I think there's that benefit. As far as
an interesting note on that, when you went, I remember you put a video going through that. I was like, this makes so much sense. Like, yeah. Actually, it in a way makes more sense than the generic stuff that you were originally told, because it's like it's two sides of a pivot. Like, why is no one thought like that before?
Yeah, because they're told they can't do things, and so they just blindly believe it without saying, well, this actually kind of makes sense the way this works. Let's try it and see what happens. And I remember on the front of that video, I tell you guys, like, this is going to look so stupid and you're going to think I'm absolutely insane, but I'm telling you this works. And everybody tried it and like, holy shit, that works really fast. I just don't talk about it in public because people call me a fucking moron because we're doing everything that they're told not to do, but whatever.
And if anyone wants to learn more about that, our last podcast, I'll put in the show note description below if you want to listen to Luke sound like a moron, but he's right.
That's it. A moron, but somehow it works. Who knows? As far as productivity, there's a couple of things. Number one, I'm really bad at saying yes when I should say no. So if somebody's like, hey, can you do this? I'm like, yes. Can you do this? Yes. Can you do this? Yes. And then it's like, okay, I've got too many yes things I can't actually do. And the problem is a lot of people want things done now. And it's like, okay, but your yes thing isn't something that's crucial that needs to be done now. But then if I don't do it right, then you forget. So then you piss people off and you upset people and all that. And they don't understand because they don't understand what's going on in your head. So I would say number one is just learn that it's okay to say no to people. And it's okay to tell people, I can do that, but I can't do it right now. But I'm going to need you to contact me maybe in 2 weeks. And then maybe I'll be able to do it. So that's one thing I've had to do is like say, I can't do it now, but I can do it. I can probably do it in a couple of weeks. And then I don't get back to them and they get mad. So I put ownership in that in their court. And I say, look, but you're going to need to contact me like next Friday and we'll see what's going on. Right. Because then they can't get mad because they accept the responsibility of contacting me. So then that takes my ownership away from it. The second thing is get things done immediately when you wake up. And I try not to do any appointments in the morning if I can help it. I try to push. There are sometimes I have to do things first thing, like mentorships or consults or whatever, like at 7 a.m. because they're on the other side of the world and they can't do it any other times. But if I can avoid that, I try to block out that morning so that I can sit at my computer and just get in a good rhythm for 6 to 8 hours and get it done. Then if I can get all my tasks that I need to get done that day, then I free up the rest of the time to just, if I get distracted, it's cool because I already got that shit done. But I have to do it in the morning when I take my meds, take my coffee, put my nicotine in, put my headphones on, music, and just start going at it.
I think that's an interesting one. And another thing I remember you reading your website that owning a business, one advice you give to yourself, I'll risk and go off on a tangent, but is that freedom line that every business coach talks about these days is a myth. But I do think where that line is relevant is that ability to go, I'm going to block that work in the morning. Because sometimes when me still doing a lot of one-to-one coaching is that my mornings end up blocked out with client work. And I go, that is the time where I would be so much better at doing some of the stuff that now is pushed to later in the day, into the evening and things like that. So I 100% get that point. I want to have a quieter morning. I get so much more done all the time.
Yeah.
You've mentioned nicotine a few times. What is the impact nicotine has on you, or in general, that you think nicotine is useful?
I mean, it's another stimulant. just another stimulant that helps massively. There's some positive effects with memory with that as well, and motivation. So that those things are always good. I just kind of I abuse it. I take way more than I should, but it does help keep things kind of level and stable. I think if I were able to acquire a larger dose of Vyvanse, I probably wouldn't need it. But since that's not an option, it's still what can I add to this to make it more effective? And that's what I found works for me. So everybody's going to have to find a different combination of things going to work for them, and that works. And occasionally a bit of tyrosine. Like what I'll look at as well, if you remember back to like foundations, or foundation seminar, which you've been at, we talk about like melanin and tyrosine. And so how tyrosine is making your dopamine, norepinephrine, epinephrine. It's also making thyroid. It's also making melanin. If I notice that my skin tone is dropped, I'll add in some tyrosine, because I know that if I'm not making melanin, it's being used for something else, and it's most likely being used for some of the stress chemicals.
That's really interesting, because that's something I've not looked at. I mean, do you ever like? What's your thoughts on using something like choline? Because I'm assuming that heavy stimulant medication. I don't know as much about your medication, so correct me if I'm wrong. This will deplete a lot of things, potentially choline, B vitamins, things like this. Are these important things to supplement as well to offset the heavy stimulant medication?
You could. I haven't tried it. I feel, a couple eggs a day and some choline foods might be all right. I probably would investigate that. I need to think about it. Maybe like, I probably wouldn't take, if I took choline, what would I take? I wouldn't take alpha GPC, because it's too expensive. You just need such a high amount of it. Yeah. And usually the amounts that you need make you pretty nauseous. If you take it and then work out, you get over that. But if you take it and you're just sitting here working, you're probably going to get bubble guts and get quite nauseous. I'd probably look at like lecithin, like taking a couple of tablespoons of lecithin granules, or maybe like choline bitartrate, or what is it? Choline, is that right? Choline bitartrate. Fuck, I haven't looked into choline in so long, I can't remember. But I'd probably take a fairly inexpensive form of choline. Yeah, you just don't. It's not something that's really that beneficial to take a really high dollar one, unless it's for like sports performance. Take 2,400 milligrams before you go and lift heavy. It's going to have a really good effect, but I don't see it as having that great of an effect by itself for this. But I could be wrong. I'd have to look into it.
Is there any consideration that you would advise for somebody? This is a more personal question, I suppose, for someone who is taking ADHD medication. Is there anything like when it comes to nutrition, lifestyle, things that we need to be more aware of when you're taking things like this? I'm assuming it will have effect on blood pressure and various things on a blood panel as well, right?
Yeah. Number one is like, make sure you investigate all the different types of medications, because they're not for everybody. That's like the fast acting stuff, and the more direct amphetamines never worked that well for me. So the Vyvanse is bonded to lysine, so it cleaves off very slowly, so it's very smooth. So if you are taking medication and you find you lose your appetite, if you're dieting, that's a good thing, but if you're not, that's a bad thing, because you'll just forget to eat, and you won't eat. And let's say you're trying to put on muscle, and you're trying to put on size, and you'll find that you're eating like 1,200 calories a day when you're trying to eat 2,400, right? If it's affecting your sleep. So work with your doctor to find the right medication, and don't just take their word for it. So what I would probably do if I had to start over, let's say they put me on Ritalin, because that's super common. I would try that, and then maybe in a couple months say, hey, can I try something else? Maybe move to something else like Adderall or Concerta, try something time release, and then say, well, that worked okay, but can I try Vyvanse? And there's a couple of other new ones. Can I try that? And kind of try all the different ones to see which one feels best, because they all do very similar things, but some are faster, some are slower, some work slightly differently. You really want to investigate and find the right one, because you don't want to be taking one that's now having all these negative effects that would be easily solved by switching to something else. And if you don't talk to your doctor about that, they won't think to switch you. They'll think everything's fine. Yeah. It's because it's not it's not an objectively measurable thing. Like if you go to the doctor and you have hypertension, maybe they give you a calcium channel blocker, maybe they give you and maybe they just give you a calcium channel blocker. You go back in and it's kind of help, but it's not getting the blood pressure down to good levels. Maybe they put you on an ACE inhibitor. then you're like, okay, those two worked really well, but maybe you're getting some swelling in your feet. Okay, maybe they put you on a diuretic as well. Okay, there, now they found the right combination for you. So, but the thing is, the difference between that problem and ADD is that there's no blood test for ADD. There's no way of objectively, they have to use subjective markers of, do I feel good or not? So you have to be vocal with your doctor and ask them if it's okay to kind of do a merry-go-round of different things to see which one works for you.
That's really good advice. Actually, really timely advice as well. So thank you very much for that, because I'm literally coming to the end of my first month's dose of Ritalin. So that could be really, really useful to sort of play around with things. I mean, for somebody, again, we're making this a little bit, obviously this is ADHD focused, but in general, for someone that wants to, have better memory, have better focus, have better attention, is there things from a nutrition perspective that you would recommend that people might oversight, whether it's the obvious generic stuff or whether it's something that people don't think about from a nutrition, a supplementation, and a lifestyle perspective?
Yeah, from a nutrition thing, I would say more plants. I don't want to say veganism, but people don't eat enough plant matter. So especially things like berries that have a lot of antioxidants and a lot of chemicals that improve memory, but no one really knows how they do that. They kind of have an idea, they're starting to, but that type of thing, for most people that don't have ADHD, watch your stimulant intake, because for those types of people, it's going to actually make things worse, because it's going to make them almost have like ADD types of symptoms when they're all jacked up. Where it's like, okay, you're normal, but now you've taken so much coffee that now you're acting like you're ADD. So maybe if you improve your sleep and maybe have a reasonable amount of coffee, maybe throw some theanine in with that to smooth some things out, you probably be concentrating better. You're probably not procrastinate. You probably get more shit done. That's this type of stuff I would look at. I like
theanine is a precursor to GABA, because that can actually cross the blood-brain barrier, right? Is that the mentality?
Well,
to use theanine?
Well, no. What I would use it for is to block adenosine receptors.
Okay.
What am I looking at? It's you're gonna make me pull this out. I have a really good picture of this. But basically, if we're going to say the not, because I can't think of this, it's late in the day, my medication wearing off. But if you want to look at like the non-sciencey reason why you would use theanine with coffee, is it smooths out the negative effects from coffee. So if you have coffee, you still get the focused energy, but you don't get the erratic, jacked up feeling from it, right? So yeah. And I like sun theanine is the tried and true one that I've always used. So if you see sun theanine on the bottle, then that's pretty good. So like if you're having a couple of cups of coffee, maybe throw in 100 milligrams of that and see if that smooths it out quite a bit.
That's interesting. That's something certainly I look at. I mean, what do you see often? Like, I mean, I'm assuming you work with people that have ADD, ADHD, and I know you work with people that have massive caffeine addictions, because that's 90% of the personal training industry, and I know how many coaches you train. like how, like whether it's stimulant medication or stimulants in general, like do you see this having a big impact on HRV? This is something, again, a relatively personal question, when I know that I've even like improved my nutrition, improved my conditioning over the course of the last year. Resting heart rate's in a low place, blood pressure in a really good spot. My HRV is always relatively on the low end of where things should be. Like this could be completely unrelated. But when I start thinking of like heavy use of stimulants, also now finding out potentially having ADHD, I start thinking, is there a link here between
oddly, have you taken your HRV lately since you started medication?
Not consistently. I haven't used this thing quite enough. I never charge it.
It would be really interesting, because there's a lot of people I've talked to that the minute they got on their meds, that their HRV actually got better.
Interesting. Yeah, the only time I took, I remembered this being charged and took it was after a massive team social where alcohol will obviously crash my metrics anyway, so it will end up being exactly the same. But that'd be interesting to look at, actually.
It would be, it'd be interesting for you to track that and just see if it's significantly better than what your tracking was before you started the medication. And
maybe different between medications. If I've got through a month of Ritalin, see how that affects it, then go on to something else, see 100%. What happens there. That could be a very, very interesting thing.
One of the big things too is when you get on the medication, obviously it's a stimulant. So you're going to probably see a small increase in heart rate. You're probably going to also see a small increase in blood pressure. So I'm big on people with ADD getting your lists and your miss done. Like get your low intensity and moderate intensity cardio done. And that will allow you to become stress resilient so that it won't have that effect. Like I still, even on medication, I still have sub 120/80 blood pressure, and my resting heart rate is still like 48 to 52, even on the medication. But when you first get on it, you're going to see blood pressure is going to jump up a tick, and it shouldn't jump up massively, but you're probably going to see it jump up a little, and the heart rate. But after 2 to 3 weeks, it should normalize. But then if you like, I did this stupidly, I ran out of my medication, forgot to go back to the doctor, and I went for like 2 weeks without it. And I saw when I got back on it, I had this crazy, increase in blood pressure again and heart rate. It was really super weird, but then it just leveled out and got normal. But I think if you get really aerobically fit, that will prevent, or hopefully be a prophylactic of preventing those increases. I mean, aerobic training has such a profound impact as well on brain-derived neurotrophic factor and the concentration and linking neural networks. So people who aren't doing any aerobic activity and haven't for a long time, I would suggest doing a couple of blocks of that, like daily aerobics, 30 minutes, 60 minutes, something like that. It's real easy stuff. Not just walking, because that's not really going to do. You need the huffy puffy stuff. So just building up to say a 70% heart rate max, kind of sustaining that just for a couple of months, and you'll see a massive decrease in blood pressure and heart rate, and you'll find that everything's a lot more smooth. You'll concentrate much better. You'll also sleep a lot better as well. And
the good thing about that's something that's probably an impact of anyone. ADHD, no 100%. ADHD, right? Like how many people, and you alluded to it early on in terms of people heavy use of caffeine intake. It's like, are you getting those symptoms artificially because you're always heavily caffeinated, you're always on low sleep? Now I'm really intrigued at seeing what when I go back to the UK in the end of June, and I'm there for 6 weeks, I'm there for a prolonged period of time, and I'm gonna like switch decaf, cut my caffeine intake right down. I'm not doing one-to-one sessions so I can spend more time sleeping. I'm really intrigued to see what happens to my metrics. Keep my medication up, but like see what happens around that and see how much better sort of a lot of those things get. Because I know I can burn the candle at both ends.
Yeah. One thing too, like going back to that kind of doing the aerobics things, I posted this a while back, but there's been quite a few studies looking at like aerobic activity and memory. And what they did was they would do aerobic activity and study. And they found that memory retention was much higher if you were doing the aerobic training and then like kind of contrast training that with a study session. So it actually works not just for the ADD people, for normal people as well.
Okay, that's really interesting. Especially, as I said, this is going to be my pet project for 6 weeks. Not only see where my metrics at, but almost like see how much study I can get done. I've already started booking as many consults I can get done from people in the UK and missed in-person education. I've not done any in 2 years because there's nothing here in Hong Kong. But so I'm making up for lost time. I'm going to see Tom Hibbert, going to see Michael Goulden, and see. I'll travel and see Nick if I can engage in a good rant every now and again. Really, really, really interesting stuff for this. I mean, do you believe in is there anything you do in terms of we spoke about this last time in terms of the posture stuff, but like mindfulness, breath work. The breath work's the big hype thing at the moment. And I know when we spoke about it from a posture standpoint, we spoke about it's like trying to fish in the ocean, make it yellow. It has a massive impact, but can you control that in that short period of time? When it comes to memory, focus, the other side of stuff, like out of the gym stuff, is this something you utilize with yourself or with clients? Do you feel it's useful?
I should do it. And I know I should do it. The problem is I go through spurts. It's boring as fuck. So it's not, to me, it's not, I don't know, the way to say sexy enough for me to stick with. So the compliancy for myself is really poor. And I find the compliancy for that stuff with your clients is really poor as well. Like your clients don't mind going in and doing 4 or 5 hours of training a week, but you try to get them to do 10 or 15 minutes of mindful breathing and headspace. I had such a low compliancy rate for it that I just got rid of it. So I'll tell them to do it, but I don't program it anymore because I know they're not going to do it anyways. Some people will, like the more hippie, foo-foo, holistic type of, clients will, but most of my clients are like high level athletes and coaches, and they just won't do it. So I just stopped.
What about ice therapy, like cold showers, things like this? Because you mentioned stress resilience earlier on,
Yeah.
and this is another thing that can potentially artificially create that. So do you think this is useful to throw in every now and again for various things?
Yeah, possibly. I think cold showers, if your water gets cold enough, is practical. If you do like, I do like the Wim Hof breathing, because you just kind of get in that real massive sympathetic state, and you don't feel the cold, or you can train yourself not to feel it. I think that's a really good idea. Again, it's a compliance issue. Like I used to do that, but the only problem was I would feel so bad when I got out of the shower because of the shrinkage, because I'm not well endowed anyway. So then it looked like I had a fucking innie, like a little outie belly button. So it made me so feel bad. So I was like, oh God, it looked like a turtle poking its head out of a shell.
Oh, I wish I could say I couldn't relate. I really do. But I remember like going into like I did at one of those events. A guy called Brian Lau. I've had on the show talking about like breath work and ice stuff, and he does these events in Hong Kong. He learned from Wim, and he did something where you do like you learn about Wim Hof and all the methods, and then you do a number of them, and then you get into a big ice bucket, and
yeah,
and I remember people doing breath holds and getting a minute tops, then going to like 7 minutes after the breathing drills. And I couldn't believe how comfortable I felt. I remember feeling so nervous and scared about the prospect of getting into an ice bath. And it was so comfortable in a way by the time I got in there for the second time.
Yeah. See, I've not yet. I do want to do one of those. I haven't done it yet. I just don't have time. But I remember this is when Zoe and I first got together. So it was years and years and years ago. I was big into the Wim Hof stuff, and I was really doing it, and I did it hard out for months. And it kind of stopped being a priority for me, just because I had so much else to do. It was hard for me to it was hard for me to prioritize time for it. But you know what's really weird? When you're doing the hyperventilation breathing, and you get these big breath holds, especially when you start learning how to, how you try to pull it into your head, and you get that really weird thing. I shit you not. I was doing it in the shower one time, and I wasn't having a FAP or anything, but I swear to God, I had an orgasm from it. I actually, I can't explain it, but I got to this point where I was like, and it was the weirdest thing. And
that's the audio for the show. When I put the audio clip out, that exact noise.
But man, that actually made me want to do it a lot more. But then I was traveling and I got too busy, so I just forgot. Maybe I'll try that tonight before I go to bed.
There's one of the methods that was in the Wim Hof event was a DMT breathing. And
that's what it is.
I never got that from it, which is a massive shame. That would have been amazing. But there's that Channel 4 show recently that about people doing all the Wim Hof stuff, and there's definitely something more people that have experienced things closer to sort of DMT from this breath work, which I think is incredible. And looking at Wim himself with like beating off infections and illnesses and things like this, which
it's wild.
Initially basically just reinforces a lot of your work in terms of like, this is like at quick succession, the impact controlling stress and becoming resilient to stress has on you.
Yeah.
Like what you can teach someone over 12 weeks is what he's teaching people, in these very short, intense breathwork sessions. Is like it's a shame that because here's the impulse control getting me cancelled. It's a shame. It's a shame that big pharmaceutical companies will never allow his stuff to become mainstream enough to actually see what effects it can actually have.
Well, the thing is, it's so out in left field. Will it ever become mainstream, or just stay in pockets of people who are into that type of stuff? That's the thing, because we have a hard enough time getting people to exercise and eat right, even though they know they should. And then you get a guy like Wim Hof, who, he's got this aura about him, and all the people that follow him, it's kind of almost like this guru-ish type of thing. And he's like, I'm not your guru, but anytime somebody's at a top level like that, they're going to have people like fanboys and fangirls and it just kind of puts some people off. And it just attracts a certain type of person, right? So I don't think it would become mainstream just for the fact that the general public wouldn't accept it as mainstream. If they don't even accept fucking walking an hour a day, or even lifting weights and eating vegetables, they won't even do that. So they're probably not going to sit around and do hyperventilation breathing. And if anybody's never done it, they don't understand, like, there is a certain level of fear you go through when you're doing it. And there's a certain weirdness you feel, and you have to overcome that in order to get to the next level of that breathing. And so I was teaching myself how to do this, just reading his stuff, and like I did an online course of his and all this. And I think this is before he was doing seminars. And I remember a couple of times I was laying on the ground going, I'm gonna die. I don't know why I feel like this. I'm gonna die. And a lot of people are so anxious they couldn't get through that. And Eugene Teo, right? His brother was at one of my seminars, and he came over to hang out at the Airbnb we're at, and I was teaching. I'd been showing people how to do this, my interpretation of Wim Hof breathing, which is what I learned from his seminars and his online course material. And I remember Eugene's brother got like really deep into it and started freaking out. And it was like, oh, I don't know how I feel in my legs. I can't feel my legs. And I was like, holy shit. And I started freaking out because I'm like, oh God, did I do something bad? And it's just a lot of people, when they get to that level where they actually feel it, you feel so weird that you think something's wrong, even though nothing's actually wrong. It's probably a good thing that you're going to that level, but that level of hyperventilation is going to stimulate the sympathetic nervous system, which is going to make you feel ramped up and a bit crazy and a bit weird.
Do you see that's because I get in theory that the aim is, if you ramp up like almost artificially in a way sympathetic nervous system, you become more resilient to it, you learn how to calm down, you know how to control your breathing through it. Do you feel it does have a big carryover if people are consistent with it into stresses of day-to-day life? Do you, like, if you have a work meeting or something happens at work or life, do you think doing this will make you better at dealing with this?
Yeah, I think so. I feel so. And I feel that way with most of the training you do. Like if we go lift weights, that's sympathetic. If you, if you go run sprints, it's sympathetic. That's why we counter that stuff with the easy stuff, like the mobility, flexibility. If you're into the breathing stuff, that type of stuff, the guided meditation, low, slow cardiovascular work and that type of thing. I think both sides of that are really important, because if you can drive yourself in a really like unnaturally high sympathetic state, then whatever you're feeling right now when you're normal doesn't seem like it's that bad. And then you can use the parasympathetic stuff to kind of pull all that back over to the right, so you can equalize both of those sides of the autonomic nervous system. So I think they're both important to train.
I think it's good that you bring that up, because a lot of the stuff that we spoke about, especially for ADHD, but generally focus in general, is people go to stimulants, whether it's a medication given to your doctor by stimulants, or it's a caffeine addiction. That a lot of this is like the stuff around this, the mindfulness, the breath work, the nutrition stuff, the supplementation stuff you mentioned. It's almost just sort of like pulling us back into the middle to a degree. Obviously you're going to need to be more stimulated than other people, but for every medication you take that helps the biggest problem, there's always going to be an issue and a result of ramping up your nervous system regularly to allow you to focus, right?
Yeah, well, people have to understand you don't get anything for free. So if you're doing something, there's always a trade-off. So if you think about just what we do with like even like physique training, like, cool, I want to get abs, but I'm gonna have to go through this level of suffering to get there. So that's the trade-off. Like, I'm gonna have to do a lot of hard work. I'm gonna have to say no to a lot of things if I want to build a gnarly physique. That's the trade-off. And then the more gnarly the physique, the more health consequences, the more negative repercussions that you have to deal with, that you have to crawl through. It's like you got to crawl through glass while you're naked, that type of thing, if you want to get there. But that's why so many people can't actually get to that level, because they can't get through the pain of the work and the feeling that they're going to feel to get there. So, it's all a yin and yang thing. It's an on and off. It's a good and evil. There's always an opposite reaction to what you're going to do. So I often say this, and I don't know if this is going to make sense. Sometimes I'll say this analogy and people are like, I have no idea what you're talking about. But, I read a lot of fantasy, and I watch a lot of, like fantasy stuff. I watch like Harry Potter, and I watch like all that shit. And it's my favorite genre. And if you ever watch movies with like witchcraft, right? Mm-hmm. They always talk about this, and they say this in the books too. Like, there's always a trade-off. You always have to give something up to get the spell done. And that's why things like necromancy is frowned upon in these books, because you're going to raise somebody from the dead. Somebody else has to die. So that's kind of the thing with this too. If you're using, stimulants, it's a double-edged sword that can go really well, but just understand you take that too far, there's going to be a massive negative repercussion to that. So you're going to fuck your sleep up. You're going to fuck your nervous system up. You might fuck your gut up. It might it might overstimulate to the point where you're scatterbrained, and it might have the effect that you're trying to resolve with not having energy. Now you went to a dose that kind of gave you the perception of less fatigue, but then you took it too far, and now you're too ramped up, and now you're really fucked, and you got to wait for it to come back down.
Yeah, so my tolerance to caffeine has gone down since starting taking the Ritalin. Not from a caffeinated perspective, because I'm used to it, and I have my very unhealthy addiction to Coke Zero, which doesn't help this at all. But from a gut perspective, I worked out very quick. I was like 2-3 days in, I was like, oh man, my guts are feeling off, and it was just my usual caffeine intake. Now I've added a big stimulant on top of it. Yeah, and that was something I noticed very quickly. Which is, again, reason why I'm quite looking forward to this 6 weeks at home, when I can sort of go, okay, let's pull back on all this other stuff, and let's just really focus on just this stuff and see where that goes. What's you mentioned a couple of things earlier on. You mentioned obviously the impact that Zoe has in terms of keeping you on point and bringing you back in. And you mentioned being able to, I can't do this now, and say no to stuff. I mean, what's your take in terms of productivity, memory on outsourcing stuff? How much do you do that in your business?
Oh, that was so hard for me to do when we first started, because I was such a control freak. I was very picky about how I wanted things done. I'm very fussy. And I had a really hard time giving control to people, especially when I started employing other coaches. And then I was like, okay, I'm going to give you these clients, and there's a certain way I want things done. And it was hard, right? But anything that is below your pay grade, anything that you don't have to actually do, pay someone else to do it. Because especially at where I am in my company, it doesn't make sense for me to do some of these tasks that somebody else could easily do. Like I need to be doing what I have expertise in that no one else in my company could do. So if I'm doing this little niddly shit, that's taking away time that I should be using my skills, and I should let one of my other employees, or outsource a PA, like a virtual PA or something like that, let them do it. So we have a virtual PA that she's the one that takes care of our website, but she also takes care of some of the other things. That's like, hey, I need a spreadsheet for this. I don't want to sit around and try to read a book and try to figure out how to make this fucking spreadsheet. That's going to, it's 5 hours. I could have been programming, or I could have been writing content, or I could have been creating new education. So, because again, too, if you say yes to too many things, especially things that you don't actually need to do, then all the important stuff is going to get pushed to the side, and then that's going to cause more stress and more anxiety.
Even if it's not pushed to the side, you don't do it at the quality that you'll
100%.
And I can imagine, for someone like you, who say you have a certain way of doing things, you have a reputation in this industry of having very, very high quality education, high quality courses. I don't think the quality that you're known for would be possible if you were having to do all the back end stuff for the website, all the editing, all the filming, all the admin, all the outreach, all the marketing, all yourself. It's that ability to be able to focus on that one thing. And you went through your routine and how focused it was. But how much do you think that's because you have streamlined your day to the things that you're good at and you enjoy, and that's why you can stay the course?
Yeah, and that has to be what's done, especially if you get really busy. Like, we're super busy. So there's only so many hours in a day. There's only so many hours you can actually work in a day. Like, I don't have a problem working 12 hours, 16 hours, but you still got to sleep, and you still got to poop, and I still got to train, and I still got to go to the grocery store and get food. I can't live on Uber Eats, so you have to mitigate your time by leveraging other people that have the capacity to do the things that you don't need to do, and also can probably do them better because they can take the time. Yeah. Here's the thing, and I've been criticized for this before. Like, if you look at my slides in my education, they're nothing fancy. You want good information, or do you want to get taught how to do things right, or you want fancy fucking slides? So there are other people who make fancier slides, they have fancier videos and all that, but fuck it, I'm all about the information. And if I was sitting in there really trying to make my slides look really, really good, I wouldn't be able to research and develop and do all the other things. Right. So that's my next. I was telling Zoe yesterday, I'm like, I really want to get someone that's good at putting slides together and building templates, making them really nice so we can polish it off, because you will get criticized for that because people will focus on the stupidest shit. So now we've got to take care of that. So I have to find somebody who can like be the creative director kind of thing, and a virtual PA or whoever who can now say, okay, I'm really good at PowerPoint. I'm really good at Microsoft, whatever the fuck they use. Or Canva, and can put these pretty slides together. Like Matt Peacock, if you look at his slides, he's got these amazing slides, but he's really good at that shit. Like he could do that stuff really fast. If I tried to make slides like Matt does, it would take me all day to do one fucking slide,
It's exactly. I always think that thing. It's like if I had all day, if I didn't have any other things to do, I can get really good at it. It's like I could probably get to a point where it takes me 5 minutes to make that slide, but I don't have the 5 hours to learn how to make it in 5 minutes.
100%.
And that's the thing.
Yeah, and you know what? If I did them, like I would be on one slide for 8 hours because it would never look as good as I want it to. So I would just rather say, hey, you make the slides. Here's the information. Here's my dodgy ass slides. Go make it look pretty.
I've got so many Canva templates, and I think that's such a thing that resonates with me. And I think one of the best investments I ever made in my business, as a huge plug for him, is a guy called Paul Spencer from a company called ATO Solutions, and he does all the automations. Like if you ever need any automation, onboarding emails, Trello boards, client management stuff, I will send you his details. He's phenomenal. But he's now got this thing where especially from someone with an ADHD brain and being able to remember stuff, someone signs up. If you sign up with me today, you would automatically get your welcome email. You would then fill in your onboarding form. That would make you a card on Trello. That means then that will give you a template meal plan that I go and adjust for the foods you like. And if I want to change the calories because you're different from what I normally do, I make that. That's all done for me. It's all in one place in the card. And
Beautiful.
Then based on my check-ins, if you go, how compliant have you been this week? Anyone that says 1 gets moved to red. Everyone that says 5 gets moved to green. Everyone in the middle gets moved to amber. And I get different reminders to check in with people. Like the people on red, I check in with more. The people on green, I can probably wait till next check-in. And that is done without me having to do a single thing. Because the amount of times I miss an attachment or forget somebody or just something like that is hands down, it's not cheap, but it's the best investment I've ever made, because it allows me to not, as you mentioned earlier, feel like I'm sort of like juggling commitments, because either I'm trying to do too much stuff or I've got behind on one thing because I'm trying to do it all myself.
Yeah, you have to, man. You got to. If you want to do it right, you gotta have somebody that can do it right. So you got to pay for that. One thing, something you said, so people who are compliant move to green, and people who are non-compliant move to red, and other people get moved to what?
Orange, amber, like a traffic light system.
What did you say? Did you say umbra?
Amber.
Oh, amber. I heard you say umbra, and I was like, that's a color I don't know. What the fuck is umbra? Amber. Okay, got it.
Yeah. Like 100% the best investment, because it just means that a little bit of my brain power now can come back to focus on me. And I like the fact that you mentioned a VA, because you mentioned that 3 or 4 times now, and I'm on the cusp of getting a VA. Yeah. And I think the fact that you've mentioned it so much means I think this is worth the investment.
Yeah, like one of the things we did that I really like, and this is a Zoe idea, is we automated our onboarding process. So used to, you would have a Dropbox account and you would have all your files, all that stuff, and you go in there and you fill out your questionnaire. But then now I have to go in to Dropbox, go on your thing, pull your thing, download it, go through it. So now you're sent a web portal where type that in, and I get a nice email that just boom pops right on my thing, and it's all your shit on it. So anything you can automate, anything you can streamline, anything you can funnel is what you want to do. Because if you continue to get busier and busier, you have to have those systems in place. When we started Muslimers, we didn't. We just got really busy, like from day one, had no system set in place. And it's taken us this long. We're talking 6.5 years now, almost 7 years, to get our systems a point where it's actually getting fairly well manageable, because we need these systems to go through, because you can't scale up if you don't have your systems in place. If you try to scale and scale up, and you scale up too much and you don't have systems in place, then you're going to piss off a lot of people, which happens because you didn't have proper systems in place. And we didn't know when we first started. We were just like, okay, well, we can figure this out. And we quickly figured out like, no, you can't be reactive. You have to be proactive. So we've had to now go back and try to redo all that stuff and keep improving the systems and keep putting more systems so that every single thing is automated.
It's a double-edged sword as well, right? Because you don't, sometimes you don't know how far your systems go and where the gaps in your systems are until you push against them and break them. And then you're like, oh, okay, next time I need to do this. So like for the moment, I'm revamping. I'm going to be soon revamping my check-in forms because to have a bit more like logic gaps. So what I find is that people can be finishing off the dieting phase. It's the same check-in. It's not as urgent anymore because it's not this strict deadline. Those people start to drop off the compliance for check-ins. Or I've got a lot of people in Serbia. I've become quite well known in Serbia somehow. and because a lot of their English isn't good, I'll be like, what are your wins this week? And they just reply, yes. Like, fantastic, brilliant. So having like multiple choice to go, okay, here's a few ideas, but if there's other and you want to, say something nice and personal, be my guest. But also have logic jumps. So like, depending on which phase you're in, what you're doing, the check-in can be a completely different check-in depending on what questions you ask, which is a complete mindfuck in terms of how I'm actually going to put this together. But I've got this clear idea in my head. I just need to go, okay, what are the actual questions going to be? And I think that was going to have a massive impact and allow me to kind of give better feedback, know where people's problems are, allow people to communicate better because you have to learn how to verbalize it. Like going back to our point earlier on about communication. But these are things I love doing. I like having more time to go, right, what are things I like finding out what I can outsource. Like I like trying to go, what makes my clients better? Now, who do I pay to sort this out?
But part of the problem with a lot of coaches is they refuse to pay to do this. They try to handle everything. And it's like, dude, if you want to scale a big business, you're going to have to spend a lot of money, and you're just going to have to accept that you may pay $2,000 worth of various subscriptions and automated things. That's just part of it. Like you're going to have to do it because you're not going to be able to be successful and scale up unless you're doing it. Like you got accounting software, you got a fucking client database system, you got mail systems, you got fucking Canva, you got all this shit that you have to, and it adds up really quickly. Like we looked at our subscriptions and I was like, holy shit, that's how much we pay. And I was like, what can we get rid of? And so he's like, none of them. Like we need all this to make the wheels turn. I was like, cool. That's a lot of fucking money.
Well, like you go, okay, I know I need a mail template. I know I need a client management system. And then I go, then there's this website called Zapier. I'm like, what does that do? Well, that links all these things together. Well, I didn't know that existed. Okay, that's more expensive than I thought. Like having like onboarding forms, you got Typeform, definitely look most professional looking, but you pay a premium for Typeform. Like, but it allows me, even if it doesn't make an immediate impact on my business, that level of quality, that level of service, that level of mental clarity will allow me down the line to make more money. In the same way, paying you for program design course might not make me an immediate return on my investment, but being better at my service, having a better overall product quality in 3, 4, 5 years is going to make me much wealthier.
Yeah, and look, the coaches, if any coaches listen to this, man, they got to understand like this. Our industry is overly saturated and it's getting very highly competitive. So you better start thinking about next 5 or 10 years and getting this stuff done and understand you're going to pay a lot of money to be successful, or you're going to drop out in a couple of years because you're not going to be able to keep up with everybody else. Yeah.
And then a lot of the things I'm thinking about now are exactly that. I am thinking like, okay, what I remember back in the day, like I think, you'd already been a couple of years in and started becoming well-known in the industry. And it was just when we started to get the Phil Learning, Jamie Alderton, Mark Coles, Phil Graham, all rising together sort of thing. And I remember some of the stuff they're doing now. And I'm starting to look at it like going, you're just waiting for the next crop of people to do that. Like Muscle Mentors did it for a while and they sort of all fell their separate ways and disbanded. They're waiting for the next group of people to do that. And I'm like, what am I doing now to niche down more, to get better, to upskill now, to be not the guy in a month's time, but to potentially be one of the industry leaders in 3, 4, 5 years' time. Yeah. This is what I need to start thinking about now. And I can't waste time on Canva templates or like mail software or iMovie if I need to do that, because I'm losing out to somebody who
Yeah.
wakes up every morning, takes ADHD medication, and sits studying for 4 hours. Right?
Yeah.
You can do that.
Yeah.
I
That's the
don't know how
thing.
to do that. I
Like,
can't do it.
like I didn't have to worry about any of the stuff we're dealing with now because I've been in the industry so long and I built the name based on good work and merit and didn't have to worry about social media and all this other stuff. But so now for the younger guys coming in, you got to worry about all that stuff because you're going to have to leverage that to become well known and then also prove that you know your shit. So like I kind of got lucky in that regard that I'm kind of a dinosaur of the industry. And I ended up working for the right people, doing mentors for the right people, and then becoming well known. But it's a completely different world now, and even I'm having to learn all this stuff because if you want to keep driving things, you gotta know how Instagram works and TikTok and all that other bullshit. So you can't know all of it. Like you can't know your shit with the science and also with training, and then also like learn all these other systems. So but you're better off paying somebody. We got a videographer that comes in once a month and we just knock out like 15 videos. There's our social media for the month. He does all the editing, the filming, blah, blah, blah. So, you got to have all these people on your team and just build that out because it's not going to get less crazy. It's just going to get more crazy in our industry. It's just going to get more technical. It's going to get more saturated. And so if you want to be the fat that rises or cream that rises at the top, you got to take care of all this shit. There's just no other way you're going to do it.
Do you think we're past the point of saturation now where there is true platforms anymore? Like Polygon Group, for all the pros and cons that it's given you in over your career, you rose at a time where there was respected platforms and like, okay, this person on Polygon Group, okay, he's going to be good. Like you can see the remnants of people that came out of the Polygon Group mold that became big names at the time. Early days UP was very much the same. That's not so much anymore. But like, do you think we're now at this point where is there ever going to be a company again that will allow trainers to create a name for themselves by proxy? Or is there just so many now that you are literally, it's down to what you do?
Look, I don't think it's the companies that are holding it back. I think it's the coaches. It's the students, man. The culture that we promote, and then you go on the forums and like hardly anybody posts anything. Like when before I got on with Polygon Group, there were forums. And at that point, I was just a student and I was super active on those forums all the time, helping people. That's how I became well known. It had nothing to do with Polygon Group. Polygon Group accelerated me. But I was on for years. I was on the Polygon Group forums before we were on Facebook. We had a PHP. They had a PHP server, and Charles was on there, and I would get on there. That's how Charles noticed me. And then I went to more courses, and Charles remembered me from the forum, and then said, "Hey, do you want to come work for me?" The problem is that they're not active. Like the students aren't proactive enough about networking and about talking to each other. They're all having private DM conversations. But that's not how you get well known. You get well known by being helpful and talking to people in an open forum, not by hiding yourself away and trying to be a lone wolf. But that's what they do nowadays. You don't see the culture anymore. Whereas before it was Polygon Group, not Polygon, PSI, when it was Polygon Strength Institute, when they actually had true culture, now they don't. They have no culture. It's all gone. It was all gone. When I started working with Polygon Group, it was gone. Charles was gone. Andre was gone. Ryan Finley was gone. That's it. It was gone. We never got that back. And that's what I want to do with Muscle Nerds, but it takes two to tango. Students have to be more proactive about being invested in the company and invested in each other as a community and build that culture up. I think the last company that did that was CrossFit. And then now that they've gotten so commercialized, they've kind of lost that too.
This could be another argument in itself for that need to outsource, right? Because we're now pulled in more directions than ever before. And I think the more people outsource, the more time they could spend. Like I know the more time I outsource, I know when I get a VM and take away some of the things that are on my plate, I'll be more active in everything. And I can imagine there are people out there that don't maybe reach out as much as me and really do sit in the shadows, or probably even more, whether they are actually busy or whether they're busy being busy.
I'll say this. I don't think it's too busy because I see them posting on other people's personal pages like having long conversations on other people's personal pages, but not having enough conversations in the open forum when you got 500 other coaches to talk to. They would choose to just spend one-on-one time with people instead, and a lot of guys, like when I came in, we understood that none of us knew shit. Like you're not gonna be in a room with Charles Poliquin and think you know more than he is, right? Or Andre Benoit or Clark Flint. So you just realized I'm a fucking moron, but if I want to learn, I've got to be okay with being a moron and ask questions and have conversations. People these days, they don't want anybody to think they're dumb. They don't want people to think that they are just ignorant and don't know as much as other people. And they're too chicken shit to say something and learn. And that's where they're fucking up. It's like, be more active, be proactive, talk more, ask questions, answer questions, get interactive, work as a group, because then you get well known. Stop private message each other these issues when you have all these other people with different experiences and different specialities that could actually help you, and then everybody would know who the fuck you are.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. So like, just finishing off, I said I wanted to sort of like finish off with something a little bit different, a little bit fun, and we kind of segued onto it because podcasts always do this. I never know how they always come full circle, but you started to go into things that grind your gears in the fitness industry. And I did a podcast with Brett, who's one of your mentees, Brett McCartan.
Brett McCartan.
Yeah. And I was on his podcast where we did an episode called Room 101. So do you know the show Room 101 in the UK? Mm-mm. So Room 101 was a book. I can't even remember whose book. Was it George Orwell? But it was a book. It might have been George Orwell 1984 that was in, where there was Room 101 was this room where all the things that you wanted to go to hell went. And there was a TV show with Paul Merton in the UK, and it ended up becoming Frank Skinner, where people came on and things that they didn't like, they ground their gears. They present it, and this is why I think this should go into Room 101. Why I think Westlife should go into Room 101, or why I think lack of spatial awareness in Hong Kong. There's another cancellation one. Why I want to go into Room 101. So I wanted to end with something a little bit fun. One thing from the fitness industry that you would send to Room 101, and one thing you just generally out of left field you send to Room 101, and why?
So many things in the industry right now. I think, how do you approach that? So one of the things is I wish everyone's elitist attitude about what they do would get thrown in Room 101. Like, stop thinking that you've got everything figured out and that everybody's stupid, and stop calling everybody stupid, and stop saying that different methods and techniques are stupid, and just see the value in it. And it's a bit ridiculous. Like, there's a lot of stuff I don't agree with. Like a lot of the really pedantic biomechanics that people are putting into exercising. I wouldn't throw that in Room 101, but I'd say it's probably got less importance than just going in and finding positions that don't hurt and getting really fucking strong and doing that. But, there's a lot of things that are irritating for sure. People don't want to work hard anymore. They don't want to put weight on the bar and actually get stronger. They don't want to put in the hard work. They're finding ways of how do I work? How do I do less hard work and try to get the same shit out of it? And they don't understand that's not how it works. The body is not going to become resilient unless you put it through some trauma and put the brain through some fear. That's probably all the bickering and fighting and everybody acting like their way is the best way. I
love that from certainly the elitist thing, where just from the perspective of just like most of the shit we all argue about the little differences, and people forget the fact that 90% of it's the fucking same. We sit there going, vegan's the best, or carnivore's the best, or low cost best. Yeah, they all work because you put someone in a calorie deficit. Now, certain things might be better for certain populations, etc., etc. But you're arguing about a method to do exactly the same thing. And the ones that are really annoy me when I see coaches that are so caught up in this dogma, like this person got shredded by 3,500 calories of carnivore diet, no caloric deficit. I'm like, oh, but they were though, weren't they? Regardless whether you did it via carnivore, doesn't matter. Yeah.
It's like they act like nutrition is an isolated, like it lives in a vacuum. Like it's okay. Well, what's their need every day? How much exercise do they do? Like it is a lot of I tell you what really ground my gear last night is I woke up this morning and Zoe had posted that reverse, like that reverse step down lunge into a Russian step up. And a guy didn't tag us in it, but just posted on his page. He goes, "Oh, people will do anything to not have to deadlift or squat." And the people misunderstanding and not asking for context. That's one of the problems with social media is you only have like 2,200 characters plus including spaces. You don't have that much room to tell the whole story. If he had actually read the copy, he would have seen that we said it was one exercise we use, not all of them. And he posted that, and it's like, bro, like we never said that that's all we would do. Like, what the fuck is wrong with you? But it's some of that shit, like the misinterpretation and not asking for more clarification. Like, you could have gotten on our thread and asked what we meant by that, and do we like the squat and dead, which we would have clearly said yes, we love the squat and dead. But instead, you decided to post that without any context, your interpretation, and then misinterpret it. That's the kind of shit I can't stand. And you see that a lot on the social media. This would definitely go in Room 101, where somebody has a very dogmatic view on how they think things should be done. So then they they cherry pick a video or they cherry pick a post, and then they tear it apart on their social media. And it's like, how is that constructive? Like, how is that constructive in moving the industry? Is that moving the industry forward or backwards? And it's fucking moving us backwards. We need more open conversations, open forums, and good, healthy debate, not a bunch of egotistical bickering bullshit, which is what you see in the industry.
I think that's what we see worldwide with social media now, is in that debate is sort of a lost art. Like, because the extreme views, whether it's, I sometimes ask myself the question, are people becoming more extreme in their views generally, in the sense of like, people, it's either you're with us or against us mentality. We see this in COVID conspiracies and to training to everything else. Or is it that the fact that what you tend to see on social media is the polarizing ends of the spectrum? Because everyone wants to see someone rant about something, but no one wants to say, yeah, you could do it a million ways and it doesn't really matter. Like that's not an eye-catching headline.
It's human nature. It's that dopamine hit. We all love extreme things. So like, if our social media would probably be really good if I went and did what I did at the very start, like 7 years ago, when I was just ranting about shit and everybody loved it. But it's now I've kind of calmed down. I've gotten older. I'm like, that's not constructive. That's not the image I want to promote. I want to promote that whole thing. Like, hey man, there's a lot of tools you could use. Let's figure out which one's the best for right now. And I'm just kind of out of that. If I'm going to debate with somebody, I want it to be a healthy debate where there's no ad hominem attacks, there's no name calling, but most of the people, it's financially beneficial to get myopic, and then be very extreme in what you're doing, because that's what sells. That's what people want. But the problem is that sometimes people get so deep in that bullshit that they can't break their marketing like that, but then they actually start believing it. And then when they say, let's debate, you're like, okay, they just talk in circles. So it doesn't matter how many facts and how logical your argument is, they're never going to change their opinion because they're now so deep in the shit that they can't pull themselves out. So there's not even any point of having those talks, because you're never going to change their opinion about it.
What about a silly one out of the fitness industry, out of something that one thing that you would like, if you could like get rid of, what would it be? Is there anything that springs to mind?
Fuck, man. Right now, the overinflated house prices in Queensland. Good God, we can't even buy a house. When we moved into our house, this house was worth, now this is Australian numbers, so I don't want anybody to hear this and be like, oh my God, that's an expensive house, because it's not for where we live in Australia, where everything's fucking expensive. I think it was like $800,000 or $850,000 is how much the going price was. We've lived in this house a couple of years. It's now been valued at like 1.25 in only a couple of years. We're like, oh, because we wanted to buy it. And now we're like, well, looks like we're moving. So I would love for them to build some fucking houses, because everybody during COVID, a lot of people from Melbourne and New South Wales moved up here because they wanted to get away from those draconian fucking lockdown laws like what you're dealing with right now in Hong Kong. So they all moved up here. So there's no housing. So everything is like 20 to 40% more expensive than it was even a year ago.
We're feeling that. We're sort of looking at like, well, where we go, and we'll probably say, as I said to you off air, we're looking at moving back to the UK within a year, probably like next June, July time, unless everything changes. And obviously, the price of everything in the UK has gone up at the moment. If you've seen the UK news, but like we'd love to live somewhere near London, but it's just unbelievable the prices of if you want to live anywhere close to London, anywhere commutable. It's like absolutely not.
Why don't you just move to Serbia where your fan base is?
Well, yeah, it's very tempting. There's clearly a fitness market, right? Because like Mr. Shallow did one recently there. I was like, okay, there's more fitness enthusiasts there. And to be fair, I've listened to some of the doctors and PT advice there about health and nutrition. I'll tell you what, throw some ads towards Serbia way. There is no clue on nutrition in that part of the world. Yeah. There really isn't. Like you would clean up with a nutrition course for doctors.
Yeah, it's weird. It's weird to me because I've always said this about the Serbian guys I know that are PTs. They tend to be the most logical, sane, smartest brains I've ever met in the industry. Almost to the point of like too much. Like they're all my Serbian friends, like they're on their shit. They know their shit. Mm-hmm. So it's really weird. I think you'd have a problem though, because I think that's one of the hardest languages in the world to learn.
Yeah, like I've got one guy that literally, I no joke, write his check-ins, put it into Google Translate, and send it. Everyone else is pretty good English. Don't need to do that, but like, that was one. I'm literally Google translating every bit of information from. Like, I don't know how well it's coming across. I hope it's coming across all right. He's dropping, so I'll take that. But I don't know. So I know this is the point in time where you're winding down, medication's wearing off, and you need to, as you mentioned on your website, go and pester Zoe for the next 4 or 5 hours. So for anyone who doesn't know who you are, where they can find you, both from a meme account, because they are gold, and from a business account, where can people find Luke?
Yeah, meme account, Luke Leaman, Leaman. Just type that in the Instagram. You like really nice memes. Muscle Nerds _health for Muscle Nerds stuff. Don't go to my personal account and ask me fucking health shit. If you want that, go to Muscle Nerds. So it's Muscle Nerds _health. And then email info@musclenerds.net if anybody wants to talk about coaching or mentorships or courses or anything like that. And then obviously musclenerds.net is the website. Yeah.
I can absolutely vouch for every course. I've pretty much done every course you've ever done. I think the only one I haven't done is it's not always about the food one. That's the only one I've not done. And I'm still waiting for a day where I can come and do the in-person part of the program design, which I felt was robbed from me. But generally, even without completing that bit because of world restrictions, some of the best investments I've ever made. So much of the way I think about my business, my practice, and some of the things I've come up with has been inspired by what you guys have taught me. So if there's coaches in this, don't wait any longer. Go and invest in these guys.
Yes, sir. Hopefully in the next 6 to 8 months, my PR status for Australia will come through and I can actually leave the country. And then we'll the first seminar, Amsterdam.
I will come as long as we can go and watch a Marvel movie afterwards, because that
100%. only if you're eating truffles.
Ah, mate, I love a chocolate truffle. It's some of my favorite things.
Yeah. Chocolate.
Yeah, exactly. Chocolate. Yeah, wink, say no more. Nothing dodgy whatsoever.
Nothing at all.
Yeah, and then when that happens, let us know. We will expense the trip across to Hong Kong for you guys to do one as well at our gym. But mate, thank you. Always been a pleasure. Thank you very much for your time. Thank you again.
Yes, sir. We'll see you.